Adam, thank you for coming today. Welcome to Startup Grind. Really excited to have you. And to kick things off, I want to start with your background. So we all know you're the president and CEO of BRAC. Can you give us a little detail into what that role is today, what you do, and maybe a little background on BRAC?
Yeah, so BRAC is Baton Rouge Area Chamber for the acronym heavy world that we live in. Our organization leads economic development in this nine-parish capital region that we all live in. The work of economic development is confusing to most, and it seems like it's everything sometimes. We are involved primarily in trying to drive business investment and growth for this metro region, both kind of project work to help companies make a decision to expand or locate here or keep them from moving or relocating, as well as trying to make the climate for job growth and economic growth strong.
Yeah.
So we kind of are in a wide range of activities to try to spur those two things to happen. Our office, the David E. Roberts Center for Economic Development is kind of where we do all that work downtown, although I was telling Stephen Loy a minute ago, we are sparse in the office as everybody is these days. So a lot of it happens virtually as it always basically has,
right.
but definitely more now than ever. Our team is about 30 people kind of spread across the different initiatives that we run. And that's kind of us in a nutshell. We're at BRAC.org. You can find out a lot about our initiatives, our strategic goals, and how we operate.
So, and we're going to get a little more into BRAC and some of the things they do. So, but I want to take a moment and maybe go back. What did Adam do before BRAC? You worked in Silicon Valley, maybe lived there a little bit.
I did, yeah.
Can you give us a little background?
So out of college, I had planned to focus on German studies, which is a liberal arts kind of thing to think is a good idea.
Right.
And
it's very promising.
It didn't work out. They realized I was not smart enough to do that, and the Fulbright people told me no, and probably a good decision ultimately for them. Leaving that, I ended up in London for a couple of years, or about 6 months, for a startup there, focused on the early days of trying to figure out how sales and marketing gets done online. This was in '97, and I was trying to figure out how to help them populate a database of computer and IT equipment sales on a website in the UK. So 6 months in London just to kind of have something else to go do and try it out. It was on a post-college internship program called BRAC. It's really kind of a cool way you can get a way to go work overseas. Did that, came back, got hired by Anderson Consulting, which is now Accenture, to work in Chicago in a technology research group. Was an analyst writing technology news for a weekly column, just trying to dissect what was happening in the technology industry. After about a year doing that, the manager of the division, Accenture, if people don't know it, at the time probably had about 75,000 employees worldwide. Big base of those were in Chicago, where their headquarters, kind of U.S. headquarters was. And everything was happening in Silicon Valley, and this research group had a research lab in Palo Alto, just south of San Francisco. So they said, why don't you move out there and start writing about technology startups instead of just normal technology news of the week. And so I kind of built this empire trying to write about technology startups. In the world of Accenture, it was the best job because all I had to do was go around networking with technology startups.
That's a good job.
In the heyday of the dot-com bubble, when there was money everywhere, events and networking gatherings. And so just loved it. But the goal was always to try to find the next interesting technology startup that was going to be important for this big consulting company to know the trends of where things were heading, which is what their research lab really did. They kind of did experimental research to try to figure that out. So I got from that back to Louisiana when the dot-com bubble burst. In 2001, you could kind of see the writing on the wall that everything was about to go to hell. And so I got, I didn't know anybody in Baton Rouge, but made a connection that Louisiana at the time was writing something called Vision 2020, or I had just written it, and was trying to figure out how to diversify the state's economy. And so a friend who was here, who I knew from growing up in Louisiana, had said, hey, you should move to Baton Rouge, come meet somebody in the governor's office and work on governor's policy. So that's how I ended up back in Louisiana after those days. Spent about 5 years in California before moving back, and have been essentially in some realm of Louisiana Economic Development or public policy.
And so when you worked for the governor's office, which governor at the time?
So I started with Mike Foster in 2002. Yeah.
So what was your role? What were you doing exactly?
I was a grunt. I mean, I was no business doing what I was doing. Stephen can attest to that. The job was to be the governor's economic development advisor. In the governor's office, they have a kind of a cadre of folks they grind down who are young, and they can make them work hard late nights. And so we were writing and researching and pursuing different policies that the state could pursue related to economic development. At the time, folks may not know, but like that was the end of his administration. He had 2 more years of the governor's term. He has kind of had a reputation of not being an aggressive economic development governor, although he's kind of got a great legacy today for what he did for education. He, in a period of about 4 months, 3 months, we ended up writing a series of state legislative acts to try to change the nature of economic development for Louisiana, which are still some of the core programs we all operate on today.
And what are those?
So, for example, the state has a tax incentive that companies that are growth-oriented companies can apply for called Quality Jobs. It was modeled on a program in the state of Missouri that does the same, where if you intend to add jobs over the course of a decade, every net new job you add, once you meet a baseline minimum of about 250,000 in payroll, so you have to be somewhat established.
Sure.
You're getting 5% or 6% back on the cash that you create in new payroll from the state of Louisiana in a check that they cut to you every year for that decade. It's basically a great way to sort of help fuel your growth with some additional cash.
What year is this?
So this was in 2002. We passed that in March or April of 2002.
And that's still around.
Still one of the most important economic development programs Louisiana uses. That's what we call a statutory incentive for economic development.
How utilizes it?
Hugely so.
Yeah.
It's probably the most important tool that it's really mainly eligible for companies that we would say are generating a product or a service that's sold outside of Louisiana. So it's not for Uncle Earl's, right? It's going to be for somebody who's generating economic activity that's creating wealth for the state of Louisiana to grow the economy. And so that's what it's really targeted after. That was also the session that wrote the big substantial changes to the film tax credit in Louisiana. The beginning of that started in that session. We wrote the state's first research and development tax credit, something that was really pushing hard coming back from California, that Louisiana aggressively needed to scale in an R&D tax credit to try to push for more R&D in the private sector. So things like that were written that year.
Okay, so it's interesting because I feel like a lot of things you're saying are pushing from California, right?
Yeah.
What in relation to where California is today, or at least policy that supports entrepreneurs, whether that's good or bad, where do you feel that? Where are we? And I ask that just from a perspective of, I hear these things. Hey, this was pushed from California. This was pushed from California. It's like, okay, so if we were on a line, are we? How close are we to at least the policies that would attract entrepreneurs or benefit entrepreneurs? Because it seems like you've named a lot that now do.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think that the policy framework is not the question. I think framework is one thing. We have a lot of advantages that we can talk about that Louisiana has tried to put in place and has put in place that do that. At the end of the day, it's a lot about trying to drive the ecosystem of different markets to have a really dynamic and vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem. And that is very difficult to try to legislate that, right? That is really about creating what this is. It's about interconnection of people to each other who can help scale companies, as well as kind of motivating risk-taking and celebrating risk-taking for those who take that risk, and then helping the network make sure it's doubling down on deals, and then after an exit, you go and find another one, and you go and find another one. And that circular system is one that you're always building. I think Louisiana is probably, you can look at the venture capital numbers nationally, we're tiny by comparison to California. So, everybody is tiny by comparison to California. So it's definitely a long way to go. I think what we would say is you got to make sure that you're always figuring out how to take it to the next level, even as you see weaknesses and challenges, you're always trying to make sure it's better. And I think what's amazing about Louisiana in the last, that's 20 years ago, right? Almost, since that session in 2002, have seen every year in different parts of Louisiana, folks sort of elevating their game and pushing it differently. But so has everybody else. So it's just constantly changing, and you're always trying to continue to scale.
We were having this conversation last week at Brew. and Stephen, you were there. We were chatting about the future of entrepreneurship, which is the topic of tonight as well. And a point was made that we need to leapfrog. Like, we can continue on the trend that we are, and we need to, make steady improvements. But at some point, if we want to move from the place in line that we are, everyone else is progressing. We need to leapfrog if we want to make it. We want to make it known that this is something we're about. So, and I want to use that as a segue to transition to the work that you do today. So, you're now at BRAC. You lead a number of initiatives. I'm curious what you think in terms of entrepreneurship in its state today. How would you describe where we are as a state?
Come to the point about leapfrogging. I think when we've seen other places that have done it where they've accelerated rapidly, I think a handful of things happen just from observations, right? Folks who exit big ventures plow it back into the market and the ecosystem they're in. I mean, what you see is private sector led for folks who believe in entrepreneurship to show that it can be done, and then they help in broad swaths, to uplift the next cadre of entrepreneurs. And I think that's a lot about what drives change. Everything else kind of is trying to follow and keep up and drive it when it happens in other places. It's also about having a broad number of entrepreneurs and a lot of different types of ventures that folks can be looking at. So there's a regular volume of deal flow to be looking at. I had a long-standing conversation with a friend who helped start Idea Village in New Orleans about whether it is important to have public policy driving entrepreneurship or just important to have great deals. And he lived in the world that it's all about a great venture, and the great venture is what drives the rest of the ecosystem.
Absolutely. And
ultimately, it's both. Like, you need to have the economic climate, you need to have the capital climate right geared toward it, but it doesn't work if you don't have a really supportive and structured ecosystem supporting companies to get created and formed, and then helping each other.
That's a good point, because I don't think people launch ventures because of good public policy. Like, I think they do it because they feel empowered to, maybe because of their background or the people that they're around. Maybe they see other people do it and they go, I can do that, or they show them.
Use the NBA as an example. You have folks who see somebody come up through high school to college to go to the pros, make $1 bajillion. That sets an example, right? To the extent that you can see an entrepreneur who does it, executes it, and does it successfully well, and they're back doing it again. It's a big statement of encouragement back to folks. I can do it. It can be done here. And I've met him at an event, and he did it, and she did it, and it was amazing. It's partly those networks that encourage each other.
Do you feel like we're growing in that area enough? Do you think we have enough new ideas coming out, or at least new ventures being built? And I say that from a standpoint of, I see the actual numbers of businesses being started. It doesn't, we don't seem to be growing in a positive trajectory. I'm curious to get your take.
It's one of the core issues, I think, to talk about. So we tried to estimate the numbers a few years ago, of probably investable early stage startups that are really quality startups. Like, you could take that company to any other market, and the angel network would be like, that's great. That's a great deal. Let's take a look at it. And that number has always been too low. It's not just Baton Rouge. It's a statewide number that you would say that probably in Louisiana that number may be 20, 15 a year that are really high quality investment grade deals a year. In Baton Rouge, it maybe is 2 to 4 a year that are really ready for any market. The team is right, the product is right, the technology is right, whatever it is. And I may be underestimating, but that's the issue, is that number has to keep getting bigger. And it's hard to cultivate and build a capital network until that number is also bigger. And so it makes you have to figure out different things to make sure that the capital network, early stage investors who want to see a lot of deals all the time, see enough deals that are really quality deals that they stick around and come to the next one and come to the next one. So I think for an early stage market or a smaller market like Baton Rouge, you're trying to also make sure that you've got all the pieces moving in the right direction. To help cure for the interest of how you create this kind of virtuous cycle of investment to deal.
And we're going to get to the story of actually Rustic Angels in a minute. In terms of deals and where we are with our startup ecosystem, because Startup Grind is a startup ecosystem. At the very least, we hope to inspire new startups to get going. When you talk about deal flow, I think there's, whether it's our audience here or people that will listen to us throughout our community, they'll ask, when you say be investable startup, and then the number being, at least from your perspective today, 2 to 4.
And I could be wrong.
Right, no,
others in the room would know.
And it's totally, but that's the point, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's you have to come up with a number. It can always be nothing, right?
Yeah.
What kind of deals are those? Because what I see a lot, and I ask this from an investment perspective, I see a lot of startups around the country where their angel networks may do more small deals with the consideration of somehow we have to try to reach product market fit. And to give an example, I guess perspective is that a lot of companies in those technology hubs are given or have the opportunity to get gas to get to the next step. Yeah. Here we gotta kind of siphon our own and go drill, which is okay. We have to hustle. What stage do you think we're investing in today? Are we investing in early stage to get them to product market fit, or are we only investing after the fact that they show that they can make money, whether or not that means anything?
No, I think by and large we're investing at companies that are pretty close to market ready.
Yep.
They may have a little bit of revenue, or they may just be right before revenue, but they're pretty far along. You don't see a substantial seed capital market that's really early capital, and that's one of the challenges. Is your friends and family for a much longer span.
Yeah.
Until you get to
which in Louisiana works. Friends and family. That's the way to do it.
That's right. The other thing I would observe about the market comparison to some of the other entrepreneurial ecosystems around the country is, if you're in a more robust entrepreneurial market where there is, like you said, more gas to get along the way in the earliest of stages, most of the ventures are looking at a national or global concept, or at least a multi-regional concept. And I think that's the key, is to say, are our companies looking for a way that they're building truly scalable ideas that solve some sort of massive problem or fit an important market niche that they've defined clearly what that is. And the better ones do, and the ones that aren't thinking at that scale are really focused on solving something more as a local problem or maybe a regional problem to try to address. And that's a big part of, I think, making sure that the entrepreneurial climate is thinking about the scale of market opportunity to know that their company could be much, much bigger. And that's where investors get excited.
Yeah. And so this brings me to this brings me to my next point. Is there an industry or set of entrepreneurs that you believe we could be attracting or that have better opportunity here? And to give a little background there, and I asked that from a perspective of, okay, so myself and Scott, my co-founder here, we run a social networking platform. So we are consumer social by nature, and we target consumer social investors, right? Those are not here. Yeah. They're just, because we are not a get revenue in the next 12 to 18 months kind of company. But having said that, the next startup we launch, never know, man. We and congratulations, Scott actually quit his job 2 weeks ago. I don't know what he was thinking, but he did, and we took that leave. Well done, man. What kind of startups? What kind of industry do you gain attention here? Do you kind of gain traction?
Probably 5 or 10 years ago, I would have named the sectors that we're strongest in as a community. Yep. This last year has been fascinating to, I think, help us reset our expectations. So just bear with me for a second and kind of follow through on this. And this is going to be about Baton Rouge, but also kind of about Louisiana. This past year, Barbecue Guys, a Baton Rouge-based online platform, exited to a private equity company who is keeping the headquarters here to scale what they expect to be $1 billion company based in Baton Rouge, selling barbecue pits online. Now, you could say, all right, that makes sense, but it could make sense everywhere else barbecue is popular.
Yeah.
It was because the company and the deal was interesting, and he was at it 20 years building that company, longer than that. So it's interesting that has nothing to do with the traditional nature of what you would say works in Baton Rouge. Yeah. But he built an amazing company online. We got rain now.
You got the rain now. It's It's coming down.
Last year, Walk-Ons, based here, but has built a franchise restaurant business. Had a big private equity, event. Again, you could say that makes sense because of LSU sports. It's also a franchise restaurant.
Sure.
It could operate in Dallas or anywhere. Marucci had a big investment from private equity to help scale and grow Marucci. General Informatics that started at LBTC, the Business and Technology Center at LSU, had a massive infusion of capital toward the end of the year to help scale and build kind of a southeast or a regional IT services company here.
Yeah.
None of those you would say is part of Louisiana's core industries. Like those are all non-traditional deals. None of those have a connective tissue to each other, to a sector. So I would say it's a misnomer for us to think that it has to be sector specific that we're predicting it. Obviously, we have really interesting market opportunities in our core industries of industrial services or engineering services or construction or petrochemical industries. And we've been trying to think about at BRAC, for example, when we look across the trends of Industry 4.0 as a technology trend to change the nature of manufacturing, that might be something that Baton Rouge and Louisiana could build technology companies that service what is a laboratory of IT investments and the potential for those at the industrial corridor, which are in many ways still, they would say, dinosaurs in IT, that they're still building out kind of the intelligent systems that can drive opportunity. But none of the four that I named are in that space, right? So it's interesting to think about that. We just saw today in New Orleans a company, Turbo Squid, sold to a company out of New York that is, a really interesting exit. Turbo Squid has been one of our more interesting IT companies or software companies in Louisiana. It's a network for buying 3D models, right? Okay. It's a purely online venture to sell and trade in 3D models, and they sold, I think, to Shutterstock. Is that who it was? Like it's a fascinating exit.
Yeah,
but again,
I didn't know about this.
Not in our traditional deal space for what you would say is kind of Louisiana's bread and butter. So I would say to your question, and a long way to come around, is I don't think you should assume that the notion of it has to be in any specific industry. Yeah. The winner of the big pitch last week at Brew, Omnidec, is a company you can put anywhere. It's a fascinating deal. Yep. Building a really cool platform for business services, right? Yeah. Online business services. So I wouldn't pigeonhole it to a sector.
I like that. I think I've heard it both ways. I've heard that we need to focus in on the sectors that do well here, attract entrepreneurs from different places to come work here because of, whether it be industrial service, whether it be healthcare, whether it be things that we have great foundations for to bring people in. So part of the reason I asked this is also, you may have seen there's dozens of articles and a lot of data showing there's a mass exodus from Silicon Valley. Everyone's fleeing, right? But obviously where they talk about is Austin, Texas, Miami, other Denver is actually, doing very
proximity
well. Yes. Yeah.
I'm guessing Provo, Utah is up there too.
Yeah. Where?
Right. Provo, Utah has been an IT hub for a long time. Right
Did
outside.
not know that. Did not know that.
It's right there next to California.
Okay. Provo, Utah. We'll have to visit.
Yeah,
I'm curious, in the current climate, what do you see as our attraction to entrepreneurs? Because I've seen mayors take to Twitter and just unleash and the mayor of Miami was just he has been next level just recruiting people. Yeah. He's taking lunch with everyone. Yeah. He's from investors to $1 billion companies to companies that just raised their seed round. He is taking pictures of doing lunch with them, and he's trying to make Miami a hub. What do you think is a good attraction? What do you think are our benefits when we start looking at attracting entrepreneurs to come here? Yeah. And the areas that we don't have, where do you think we could excel? Because we have, food, football, and culture, and then I don't know how far they'll take us, but I'm curious to get your take.
So I'm a big believer that quality of life drives decisions more and more, right? So when I moved from California to Baton Rouge and thought about the choice I was making about where I was choosing to live, a lot of course is that I'm originally from Louisiana and I missed certain aspects of kind of the nature of life in Louisiana is a very comfortable, kind of have fun, focus on family, and enjoy yourself. Don't just grind.
It's a little slower.
To use
it's a little slower.
It is not the pace; it's the enjoyment of it, right? Yeah. I think it's because I think you'll see, especially in Baton Rouge, around the universities, you see folks are driven to achieve and succeed, and yet there is still a core understanding that we all are parking the work life for our personal life in a different way than maybe everybody else is, or at least in a way that I've always felt is pretty unique. So my sense is that the argument for why is definitely driven by culture and style for who we are as a state, who we are as a people, and that we just behave a little bit differently for our ways that we operate to make that life choice in a different way. Yeah. I do think that a lot of the folks that would choose will choose to do so either because of market opportunity, job opportunity, or family relationship. Either they or somebody connected to them has a Louisiana tie that drew them in or drew them back. And my sense is that we continue to leverage those connections back. So on a meeting earlier today, somebody sent me an article that was in, I figure out which journal it was in, but it was a person who had moved from San Diego to Austin and hated it in Austin and was writing a column back to California to expose Austin for how much they disliked Austin, which I thought was like a hilarious. Yeah. So I sent it to my sisters, both live in Austin. I was like, hey guys, like y'all suck. You know? It's great.
Just a reminder.
Yeah, just a reminder.
Yeah.
Hey, if you didn't know, you should move to San Diego apparently. But it was funny to me, like see, like everywhere has blemishes. It's always something that's different. Like whereas I do find like Louisiana is culturally proud, and while we have our warts that we have to keep working on, there's this cultural pride that I think feeds into the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I do think that it also, if we continue to nurture it, is part of why we take risk. Yeah, it's like we're willing to help each other out. Like find a way that you can connect, support everybody. It's kind of like what you'll have on your placards here is, you know, give first rather than ask. You know, a lot of that mantra is kind of in the DNA of the state. So I don't know, I'm a believer that those are some of the reasons why I think it's going to drive change or can drive sort of people's choices. At the same time, I'll piggyback that on a different story. So the guy who started Twitch is from Kenner. Moved to California, sold Twitch for whatever billions he sold it for, millions he sold it for, and was talking to some folks about whether he would move back here or to Louisiana or go somewhere else. And he was talking about like Louisiana's tax code was bothering him, that he was going to have to pay more income tax. Like, is that really you sold it for $900 million? Yeah. Like, are you really concerned about
trying to pick something?
I mean, it might be that you just want to go to Vegas. Come on, whatever it is. So I think there are still things you got to work on to make sure that you're drawing people in.
On the tax code, quickly, angel tax incentive. This is something that in your background you kind of saw take hold. Yeah. Can you give us a little understanding into what that is and what is that incentive in general?
So when working in the governor's office and somebody tells you what laws would you want to write while you have your time here? Yeah. You have the governor's office at your disposal. Go and do what you will. After passing quality jobs and film tax credit and R&D back in 2002, we started thinking, well, what else could we try to do next chance we had an opportunity? We started looking around and had a couple of ideas. One was we'd seen states try to pass fairly substantial fund-to-fund deals. Like you would raise $100 million to invest in 10 early stage venture capital firms that would then plow capital into early stage deals. So we were trying to figure out, could you do something like that in Louisiana to create a fund of funds to drive in-state capital access, so we tried to pass a bill on that. The other bill we tried to do was to create kind of a market for super early stage angel investing. And so we looked around. There weren't many great examples in the US. We actually ended up finding one in Canada. There was, I think a guy at the University of Toronto wrote a book on like tax credits for venture investing and had written a chapter on angel investing. We're like, oh, let's try to do that. So we looked at this idea of creating an angel investor tax credit in Louisiana. This was back in 2004 or 2005. At the time, this is now Governor Foster left in 2004. Kathleen Blanco became governor in 2004. He left in 2003. She became governor in 2004. And so we started kicking around this idea of could you create a state angel investor tax credit? It's still in place today and it has become a super valuable tool for folks. It's gone up and down in how it's used and the structure has changed.
Where's it at today?
So today, if I remember correctly, Todd can remind me, is it 20%?
25% and 35% of
So it's a 35% on investments so the value to the angel investor on the amount that they invest, it gets spread out over 5 years, if I remember correctly, 3 years. So the investor, what it's essentially trying to do is de-risk to the investor or lower the risk to an investor for going into a higher risk angel deal. And the idea at the time when we were working on it was most of the capital in Louisiana that's willing to go into stuff is going to real estate or oil and gas or other things, but it's not enough going into kind of high risk, equity deals for startups. And so the idea was to try to spur that by motivating the investor to take a look at early stage deals more in Louisiana. And so it was passed, it remains to this day.
So on the note of angel investing, there's a angel group here in town called Rustic Angels, something you're a part of. Can you tell us a little more about that? And
sure, yeah.
Kind of how it formed,
how it came about.
Yeah.
So this is
and just us, we as a startup, as a startup founder, one of the things we always talk about, we're like where are the angels, so when in the last year and a half as we heard the talks and we heard it come together, we're really excited that it's here. But for everyone listening, let's
talk about what that is.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, to finish up before I forget the thought, the angel investor tax credit, if somebody heard us talking about it, it's a quick Google search. You'll find the page on LED's website about it. What I would refer to folks to is if you think you are eligible or want to be eligible to seek angel investments as a company that you can sell to your angel investors or your prospective investors, that they could use this tax credit if they invest in you because you're in Louisiana and you're eligible. You do have to become qualified as a Louisiana entrepreneurial business. And so one of the key steps to prepare as a company is to go and check it out, understand what it is, and then you can kind of put it as part of your pitch to go and talk to businesses about it. The Rustic Angels deal. So this is probably late 2018, and talking to kind of a handful of high net worth folks that invest in startups. I made the point to a few of them that it is embarrassing to me. I'm from Lake Charles, Louisiana originally. It is embarrassing to me that Lake Charles has an active angel investor network and Baton Rouge doesn't. This is back in 2018, early 2019. I was like, Shreveport has one, Lafayette has a little bit of one, New Orleans has a pretty strong one. Why doesn't the capital city have one? And shame on us collectively who care about this and are excited about it for not creating it. And so we decided we would convene a small group of 5 or 6 folks just to try to put that same shame pitch to them. That was in kind of early 2019. And thanks to Nexus Louisiana and the Louisiana Technology Park and their team, they basically said, we'll rise to help you guys try to help figure this out. But ultimately, it has to be started by and driven by angel investors who want to have a kind of a network to invest in deals. And they also, what's critical about it is angels are doing something much more important when they operate together is they're helping each other evaluate the investability of a deal.
Yeah.
And you need to, like anything, many hands make light work. You need others to help you who know that space to evaluate the deal, give you feedback.
Yeah.
They may not know a medical deal. You might know a software deal, whatever it is. You need to bring your collective intelligence to evaluate whether that deal and that investor, that entrepreneur is a good deal or a bad deal. Otherwise, you're going to squander your money as you probably were before you came together.
Well, we've learned there's an essence of laziness to investors.
Oh my gosh, for sure.
That's where intros come in.
Yeah.
Not every single investor is gonna take the 2-3 hours to vet you.
Right.
So if someone else says that, hey, you should invest in so and so, it gets done. Totally get that. And I'm glad it kind of came together. And I agree with the fact that there's a lot of you need to have it angel driven. So from your perspective, and put this in anywhere in the answer, I know you were speaking on it. What do you think that motivation is from angel investors today here in Baton Rouge to actively invest in startups?
So I find that they are two sides of the same coin. The entrepreneur is passionate about the project.
Sure.
Like, I love to invent. I love to create. I'm trying to solve a problem, and I want people to believe in my idea.
Yep.
Is an amazing idea. Plus, I want to make a lot of money doing it, and have a lot of people that are fun to work with, rather than doing whatever else I was doing.
Sure.
Entrepreneurs or investors, I think, have the flip side of that, is they are jazzed about deals. These are investors who could do something else with their capital, but they choose to say it's fun to take the risk to be a part of something really interesting and special. And I think a lot of it is their own just personal energy that they derive from being a part of a project. Even though they're on the different side of it, they're evaluating it, holding it accountable, putting it, but they're also trying to figure out how to make a lot of money in doing it, but also they've probably made a lot of money, and it's also somewhat about the pure energy and enjoyment that they get from doing it.
Sure.
So I think what we're trying to do as kind of the folks that are helping that network, and would congratulate Todd for being a big piece of that, the cohesion of that group is the hardest part, like keeping it energized. Coming back to what we were talking about before, if you have 2 to 4 deals in a metro area that may be really ready each year for a outside investor to come in and take a piece of the company, you have to find ways to give them other access to deals. So it was really important with what they did in creating the Red Stick Network, that they partnered with the New Orleans Angel Network, No Land. And so they're basically, let's say a subsidiary club, a partner club, where they're seeing deals from New Orleans, and the group from New Orleans is seeing deals from other cities. And they're all kind of partnered together in this broad national network of angel investor groups that a deal can kind of syndicate across the Southeast, essentially. And this is one of the hubs they could stop in.
Yeah.
So if we're doing this right, we would have, we continue to want to have a bigger and bigger group of angel investors. And by partnering, they'll see deals in this group, but they're going to see deals from a lot of places. So they get to have fun evaluating deals. But by the fact that they exist here, it makes sure that the angels that are here and ready are getting feedback, having access. They can pitch. They might get a no. A lot of them are going to get a no.
Should.
But that's going to happen anywhere. But that no is a valuable tool to helping that company get better.
Yes.
That ideally it's a no, but do these 3 things that I see that are bruises on your project.
So love that. I love no's.
A good no, right? A resourceful no.
Just I think more people need no's.
Yeah.
I think startups need more no's. I think they need more opportunities to get turned down, more opportunities to pitch. More opportunities to lose. And I think one thing that I notice here in Baton Rouge, and one thing I'm excited about for the future, is that I felt like early on there weren't enough opportunities to get a no. There weren't enough opportunities to go and get told that your idea is not good enough. Because ultimately, I think startups need that. They need more eyes and ears, and they need to go through a set of no's and a set of not come back when it's profitable. Like actual feedback. And so I'm very excited about what y'all are doing. I know us from the startup community, we're excited to see it. And in regards to last point on this, in regards to deal flow, how has that been? If there's something you can share, do you see, for instance, out of every 100, out of every 10 deals that come in, how many of those are actually coming from Baton Rouge? And I'm not going to take that as a negative if it's low. It's more of a challenge too. Like, where are we in your eyes? Are we at 1 or 2, or are we at 5? And where can we start pushing ourselves and elevating what the businesses here do?
So let me say this about Red Stick. It is still a work in progress.
10-4.
So with COVID, things are always kind of a little precarious. So it was actively cranking along in fall to spring, fall 2019, spring 2020, cruising through about 6 months, and then COVID kind of slammed things to a halt. So I think we continue to see them actively looking at deals, but being all virtual, I think it's tough to be an investment club when you can't actually have the fun aspect of being an investment club, but being kind of in the presence of each other, which makes it a little trickier.
I couldn't agree more. Look, we had virtual events from, we started Startup Grind last December. We went to virtual in March. I told everyone I hated it.
Yeah, it's hard to do.
I'm a virtual meeting kind of guy, but virtual events, no.
I don't want to
see it. It's for the birds. Go ahead.
But anyway, so I think that let's pause for a second and observe that they did, I think, 2 investments through Red Stick or Baton Rouge Deals that got deals in Red Stick, and it's kind of first. So that was a credible half year of activity.
Go ahead.
It kind of benchmarks to around what I was talking about. But they also have seen a ton of deals from broader markets to be able to evaluate. So I think that's kind of an ongoing project. But I think it came along. It's something that, let me pause and say it's something different about our entrepreneurial ecosystem. I think what's really interesting to us is if you look across Louisiana Technology Park, probably has 12 to 15 startups in it. Now they're of course virtual and in person, and it's kind of been different through this year. Out at the Louisiana Innovation Park, LSU Innovation Park, you probably have 25 or 30 companies, startups out there in incubators at those two facilities. I would say if you have that plus coupled with the companies that they are serving or partnering with, trying to help consult, you could probably say that that's another 50 to 100 companies that are not in an incubator, that are somehow in a network of service, that are in Metro Baton Rouge. And then you probably say if that's 100 startups or early stage companies, there's probably 2 to 3 times that aren't in the network, that are building a venture that may just be doing it outside of the normal networks that you're just connected to. So when you think about that, plus what you see out of the sort of the ecosystem of the campus itself at LSU, right? So what's amazing about it is if you were to go over and talk to the commercialization staff at LSU, there's plenty of ventures that they have that people are developing intellectual property or building companies that aren't in an incubator, aren't yet coming to seek services, but they're building a patentable idea, a protectable idea that can turn into a venture down the road. So I think it's a really interesting place to be when you have those assets and those resources, and folks step back and go, oh my gosh, that's a lot of real companies out there building startups, creating jobs in the market.
It's more a number than I knew. And this is so this might be a good transition to our last topic, which is resources. We talked earlier about that. We were talking about registrations for Startup Grind. Over the last year, about 40% of the registrations for Startup Grind have been people that have identified having or being a part of a startup in some way, right? And I'm curious, so there's a lot going on here in town. We talked about network. We talked about the opportunity and then the various industries, then maybe industry agnostic to an extent, and really hopefully would grow to that point. What are the resources in town that, let's start with this. What are the ones that are not being utilized in your opinion?
So my favorite example of this is not for everybody. It's one that you need to be a little further along to take advantage of, but we have referred a lot of more seasoned entrepreneurs that have a project, they have employees, to go through what's called economic gardening at LED. There's a program where you get free consulting to your startup, strategic guidance for building your company or taking it to the next level if you're ready. And so they're going to do some evaluation to make sure this at the State Economic Development Agency that you're an eligible company, you're at the right phase of your venture to go into economic gardening. But it's a program, they partner with a national foundation that focuses on entrepreneurship called the Edward Lowe Foundation to create this service. And then through that, they have been able to take in companies. LED pays for these services on behalf of Louisiana's investment. Somebody will come in, if you get made eligible for it, you'll get roughly 20 hours of time from an expert who's going to take your books, they're going to take your strategy, they're going to kick your butt and hold you accountable. Like, your idea is a dumb one, this is going to be your problem, but do this next, do this after that, do this after that, and you'll be much further along that you're really seriously ready for what's the next phase of your company. I'm a big fan that people should get more really hands-on, one-on-one coaching and guidance for their companies. That's an incredibly underutilized or unknown one that we often will tell people that's an early one-on-one thing you could do. If you go through that, then you also open the door that you can go through their CEO Roundtable Program, another really fabulous kind of peer-to-peer mentoring program that they offer, market by market. So you can be put in a cohort of about 12 other executives building a venture or a season, but trying to scale the next venture. And you kind of coach each other about where you are, and you serve as mentors, kind of like a YPO or a YEO that you're coaching each other on your next phase. So those are two just examples right there.
Rob Wise actually introduced me to CEO of Roundtables. Great resource. And talking about one-on-ones.
And free, by the way.
It's free. It's completely free.
You don't have to pay for the YPO.
And talking about one-on-ones, I think there's a tool that we only became aware of because of the tech park. So we have an advisory board. We had no idea what, we've never thought of one. And when we first got introduced to them, they said, to come in here, you have to have an advisory board. Like it was, we're like,
okay,
we're like, okay. To this day, one of the most beneficial things we could have done. And just for that one-on-one, that having that person that you can, you have a little board, they're all looking at one direction, which is the growth of your company, and being able to have those discussions with no filter, it's priceless. So
it's hugely valuable.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is interesting is folks don't think about LSU as a service provider.
Yeah.
They think about LSU as a monolith that teaches 32,000 kids a year, and in interesting ways. Outside companies that have nothing to do with LSU can call up and try to find ways to find an advisor, find a person who really understands their space, find a researcher who wants to help them dig into the market opportunity, and maybe it's a business undergrad or a grad student who wants to work on a project as an intern. There's somebody in the marketing college, maybe, college of communications, may be able to help you think about your marketing strategy. It's just there are a wealth of resources that are business services that are absolutely not packaged as business services. But the fact, I'll actually give an analog story from a trip we took. We took a market trip to benchmark Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 2010. And what was fascinating to me in talking to the equivalent of Nexus, Louisiana and the Louisiana Technology Park in Pittsburgh, we said, hey, how many of your deals are coming straight out of Carnegie Mellon or Pitt? And they were like, 20%. So where are the 80% come from? He's like, it's the ecosystem around the universities that either it's a venture here that's gotten to the universities or it came out of the universities that had nothing to do with the universities. A professor who built a company while teaching, but it's not a spin out. It's just his side project or her side project. And I think that's absolutely what makes it really great to be in a university town is you're in that culture and climate to be able to feed off the intelligence of the brilliance that you get from LSU and Southern to have those researchers that are there. So
I love that. Look, so we're towards the end of it.
Yeah.
So I think first off, I'm going to share. We'll definitely be able to try to share all these resources with everybody. I'm excited for the future of Baton Rouge and the entrepreneurs we've seen here. We hope to continue building that ecosystem. As we wind down, we talked about resources. We talked about angel investing. We talked about the ecosystem, finding people, meeting people, connecting, coming to events like this. Is there anything that you see or that you would like to kind of leave with tonight for everyone? Whether whether that be a message from you at BRAC and what you envision for the future of this city, or even a couple tips. So I'll leave that to you.
Yeah. So I had to give a speech to a group to kind of kick off the year of our work a couple of weeks ago, and my leadoff message was coming out of 2020. We have the year behind us now. We can all take a breath. Baton Rouge is absolutely at a place that it needs to stop and reconsider and focus on the future. This is what post-COVID should look like. And I think of 2016 floods were kind of a really interesting moment when we had floods, we had an Alton Sterling shooting, we had a police shooting after that, and the community really struggled, but also ultimately came together to say, we have to be better than who we are. We have to help each other get through all these incredible tragedies. And you saw this post-disaster moment when everybody was filled with unity and a sense of purpose. And I really think 2021 in a post-disaster moment has to have that kind of moment for this year. And it shouldn't be that we have to have all the answers. It should be we are in this together to change this for the future. So this year, our organization is doing a kind of a rethinking of our own work. We've hired sort of outside help, as we talked about consulting, where we hired our own consultants to come in, and we're benchmarking Baton Rouge against 40 other communities right now to look at the data of Baton Rouge relative to about 40 other communities in about 1,000-mile radius of here that are roughly the same size as us, maybe a little bigger, maybe a little smaller. And we're looking at their data relative to our data to see across a section of things how we're doing, whether it's innovation and entrepreneurial dynamism, or diversity and inclusion, or talent production and recruitment, all the facets that drive economic growth. And so that'll lead us to destroy programs, change things, reinvent things that starting next year based on that kind of reassessment, we'll kind of be refocusing our own work in different ways. So I think that's where we should be as a community right now, is saying, let's wipe 2020 off and let's focus on the future. And it really feels like we're still in the middle of this damn thing. You know, we're still kind of doing the safety precautions.
Sure.
So there's a few thoughts about this. One, everybody should take PPP who can. It's like encouraging folks to take a vaccine shot. If you haven't gotten a Paycheck Protection Program forgivable loan, you should take every amount of it that you can. And a lot of folks who haven't distrust government, hate the words SBA. They think SBA is a 4-letter word. You know, they want to figure out what's the right way to proceed. They should, if they can, take advantage of it. And if they're eligible, if they saw 25% decline in a quarter in 2020, they should get a second round if they haven't taken it. That just reopened. It'll be open until the money runs out or mid-year or so. It can be a big lifeline to companies or a boost for extra capital to be able to do something extra, bring on a new person, add a salesperson, whatever it might be that you could do with that resource if you can. And we also, I would pause and say, saw a disparity of access that Black-owned businesses or ethnically owned businesses did not apply for PPP at the same rate as everybody else. And so we also have to make sure that we're doing a better job of spreading that to our networks to say, if your bank didn't get you, other banks will help you. And you don't even have to change your banking relationship. Just go and find a banker who will help you walk through the process to take advantage of it. And they are thrilled to have it and help you. We made the call out last year in May or so to push for Black-owned businesses who hadn't taken advantage of it to call us, and we'd help you, introduce you to a different bank. And all our bankers said we'd love to help connect folks to those and walk them through the process. That's that. The second thing I'd say is our job, and my job specifically, is to try to make sure that we know the Baton Rouge area business community. And I don't know everybody. We try to know everybody. Yeah. But if we can do something, we're trying to make sure we're helping folks make connections. And so I'd say learn about how we can help you. We have a lot of different ways within our work where we help connect businesses to other businesses or give them guidance and advice and connections to other service providers. So we're incredibly accessible. We actually turned on one of those features on our website last year as part of our own COVID changes, where there's a live person on our website every day you can go and chat with and ask any dumb questions or some brilliant questions. If we can answer them, we'll try to help steer you to resources. So we want to make sure folks know how to use us. So.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, give a round of applause to Adam, please. That is, thank you so much.